So this is a little mini tutorial slash reminder video for myself on NES ROM hacking. This might be helpful for some. Some stuff might not be like 100% accurate. Or maybe I just don't know correctly. I'm still kind of new to all this. But I did notice that there wasn't many video guides. So for the stuff that I do feel confident about, we're gonna go into it. So the first thing you're gonna need is the program Megaflex or Mega FLE X. Everything you can find on romhacking.net. And there's also a ROM hacking Discord, specifically for Mega Man, that you can join, and there's a lot of resources you can find there as well, or you can ask if you're not sure. So continuing with that, you might need a Hex Editor. I've been using HXD is the one I've been using. There is also you have to have a way to view your sprites. So you will want something. I've been using TLP, that's the name. I couldn't remember the name for a second there. TLP is the one I've used. So you open it up, you open your file, and you can see all the sprites. You can change the palettes. And when you edit something, it changes it on the sprite. But anyways, all right, so yeah, you have your Megaflex, you have your TLP, you have some kind of debugger emulator, like Mesen, or I've been using Fceux, pretty popular one. You also would want like a patcher of some kind. So I've been using Lunar IPS, pretty standard one, so that when you open it up, all you have to do is just like apply the patch to the file. But you'll want to make a lot of backups. Pretty much half of what you're going to be doing is backups. And the last thing is the music editor. It's specifically the Capcom music editor if you're doing Mega Man. That allows you to see the songs. So if you come over here, you can set the address and the song ID. You read the channel. Displays it here. And you have all the different squares and stuff. You can change it with the keyboard, like pressing space makes those squiggly lines and stuff. So for a lot of my hack, basically what I would do is like remove different channels. Or modify the speed. If you notice there's 2 spaces. You know what I mean? Like changing here would be like a smaller increment than changing here. And for some songs, it makes a huge impact. If you're trying to import music, at the moment, not that I know of, there's no way to like do that. Not without like writing it in like line by line, you know what I mean, like typing in the numbers. And you want to pretty much stick to the music part of it. When you're ready though, you want to create the code. And that pretty much, it'll like tell you like if you want to do it, if there's any errors or anything like that. And one thing you can do is you can like set the address of one song, like read the channel, switch it to another song, and then import it. But you have to be careful because like if the song's bigger than where you're importing it, it can push it over and end up turning things into sound effects or into like all data. And that can be a real pain to fix. And you may have to like reuse other songs and stuff. And that may or may not have happened to me. But yeah, there's a lot of information if you click the question marks. It'll kind of fill you in on everything. But yeah, pretty much setting the address with the song ID. And these song IDs do match with the NFC, like the song itself online. So, like I said, it's pretty much down. It's kind of similar to FamiTracker or FamiStudio or any of those kind of things. Where if you know like how to input it like that, then you'll be good. But if you're not familiar with that, or like LSDJ, it reminds me of that as well. And what else will you need? Obviously, you need your own copy of whatever Mega Man game you're doing. I believe the editor I'm doing is primarily for Mega Man 3 through 6. And there's different editors for different Mega Mans, even for 3 through 6. But I found the most success with that. And I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, Megaflex or Mega FLE X or whatever. You might want the tools editor, which is a thing that you can find in the Discord. Pretty much has all these like optimizations and air sliding and all this stuff. But most of these are just a combination of all the things that you can find on romhacking.net. So depending on the game and all that. And you also want to be careful if you're using the Japanese or American version. There is ways to make patches work. And there is ways to like, it may seem like it won't work at first. And Sometimes it can just be that the header, no header kind of thing. Everything might be offset, so you might have to be fixing that in order to make the Japanese to English patch work, actually. Most of them will work. So if it's not working, it's probably something like that, where the offset might be off somewhere. So if you're good enough on that, you can do that. I think that's pretty much it in regards to the tools you'll need. So, like I said, Mega FLE X, Mega Flex. This is what it looks like at the Proto Man here. When you open it up, it's going to ask you which file to use, like which ROM file you want to use. And I'm just going to open the final version of my game. Just so you know what I mean? So you can see like a modified game and all this kind of stuff. And I can show some of the steps I did. So, oh, there was one more tool I should have mentioned. Specifically. That I used. And it was a Rockman 5 thing. What was it? Oh, it's the Object Perimeter Editor. Now this bad boy. So the same thing's gonna ask you for your file. So what it does basically is you have two files here. This first one, you can do a lot of fun stuff with it if you look here. So you can make it like not turn or be like a block or invisible or do all sorts of fun stuff like that. So you can kind of mess with things here for like each individual enemy. Remember, it's gonna do it for every instance of that enemy. So you might want to reserve it for like exclusive things like that. But if you head over to Object, like you want to make sure you click Object, it'll give you like the breakdown of everything. So you know what I mean? If you go over to like the mouth veil, which is like, and if you go look up some of the names, some of them are translated correctly and some aren't, but most of them you can figure out. It's not too hard. Or like process of elimination. So what you have here is like it breaks down all the weapons, you know, Rockbuster, Crystal, all this you should know from. I'm doing Mega Man 5, so you should know if you want to know about Mega Man 5. That's a whole different video. But the main thing to watch here is besides changing this, which does affect the game. So if you want to make it insta kill them or whatever. But 99 would be like an insta kill if you're wondering. And that would be like a tick of damage, like 1 tick of damage, 2 ticks of damage. So these banks, these operation, these routines, all this stuff, basically the sprite is where it's gonna come from, and the object ID. You pretty much don't want to mess with these bottom two. But let's say you wanted to make like a bombier, like a mouth veil. See how the only difference is this number here, the middle one. All you would do is you literally like would copy it, come over here, bombier, you'd paste it in, and you'll notice that little asterisk there. And yeah, that would make the change. And then you would just save it, and the change is done. You'd now have a mouth veil acting like a bombier. Bombier. I never know how to say the name. And that's basically a lot of the stuff I did. And this does go for weapons as well. All you have to do is keep scrolling. You can do it for Eddie. You can do it for Rush Jet. You can make Rush Jet into something different. But you can't actually change. You could. So what you could do is like with the weapons. I switched weapons around with even like I made one of them spawn an enemy. And all I really did was just there's one of them that like makes an enemy or something like that. Or I think I just made it the enemy itself. So when you click the button, it just makes that enemy. But then again, it was just by taking the number. Let's say I wanted to do this. You notice that the 1D never changes. The sprite bank and this stuff will change. And you can mess around with that, but it's often fine if you want to make it retain its original graphic. Don't change that. It will still look like what you had it before. I'm not sure if you change both, if it will look like the new thing. Because sometimes the palettes are like specific to certain things, and it gets kind of complicated because it's the NES. So, the one thing I can guarantee is changing the operation routine, which reminds me of Battle Network, so it feels so perfect. And again, you just copy it. So let's say I wanted to make my crystal, or my super arrow. You know what I mean? And notice how like nothing else changed. I would just paste this in. And now my super arrow is a met tool, thing, whatever. Totally useless. And again, this goes for bosses. You can make bosses into enemies. And I actually did that with my hack where I changed, what did I change? I changed a random enemy I didn't use in the game. Basically, it wasn't even that hard. I think I just pretty much put the operation routine. The only issue is that not everything will work with everything. So some things, you know, they might require too much memory or whatever the case may be. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Or it just might not work as intended because maybe it's the way the gun shoots or whatever. Like some items will work certain ways with certain things. So that's kind of the fun part. If you actually have a better idea of like where these addresses are, you might be able to do something more elaborate. Like for example, like health refills and stuff like that if you point it to the right address. So I feel like pretty much the sky's the limit in regards to this object parameter editor. And if it's not on romhacking.net, just either like ask me or go into the Discord. And I know it's out there because yeah, there's many ways to find this. I'm trying to think, and that's pretty much it in regards to this. In regards to this, what do you call it? Object parameter. I'm not gonna save it for now, just because. And again, there's all sorts of tools. These are just the tools I was using. If you find stuff that's better, worse, whatever, like, do what works for you. So, okay, let's get into Mega FLE X, Mega Flex. I like to call it Mega Flex. This is version 0.701. Hasn't really been updated ever, or at least not in a long time. So but if you're using it, it's probably going to be the exact same version. So we'll just go through everything real quick. On the top here, file, you can save, reload the ROM. Pretty much don't want to do any of these other ones. You just pretty much want to save. The backup will, I think, just back up to when you first imported it in. So if you really mess something up, that is a last resort. But you pretty much always want to make backups because there isn't really any way to undo with this. You can't really undo anything. So remember that. And always just make backups, like manual backups. Like, you know, make a new folder, copy, paste your file. Next up, in level, you have the palette editor, SPD editor, table, TSA table. Bunch of stuff here. This is pretty much the bulk of the program, what you're going to be using. It's all here. I'll go through them in a second, later on, because we are going to break them down. Like, palette has your palettes. SPD kind of gets more into, like, the individual tiles. The tile table tells you like what each tile is itself, you know, like what those tiles are. PSA is this will give you like the information, I guess, like how to set these tiles, like what a ladder is or a ladder top. Lots of very specific things that can be specific to the level. Where were we? Structure table. I believe if this gets full, that's when it's gonna start telling you you're corrupting your ROM. There is only so much space, and the game already uses pretty much everything. So you do want to make sure that you do not exceed this amount. And if you're pre-using tiles, like you're just using what's already here, it's not going to matter. That's when you start creating new tiles and new things. That's when you start running out of space. And it will happen very quickly, especially if you don't do things a certain way. You get the screen editor. This is like the bulk and butter. This is like where you're gonna like actually edit tiles and actually do things. I'm using right click to select and left click to like paste it. You can set your midpoints, boss point, screen scrolling. Like this is like all the stuff happens here. The enemy editor. So this is where you place your enemies. It is separate from the level design. So like you have to open up a separate thing from the screen editor or the SPD. Like all these are all separate windows. But if I do edits here, it will do it on the enemy screen. But you do have to remember which screen you're on. It will be very easy to like, oh no, like, oh, I clicked around. And there's no undo, right? So it can definitely add up. And you can get yourself frustrated very quickly. But there is ways to like paste stuff. And like, if you remember the positioning numbers down here, there's ways to do things so like it's not a big deal. And there's other techniques I can show you in a second to sort of help with more riskier things you might be pulling off. The door editor lets you change like the door heights and where they're gonna be. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Just from they're kind of on opposite ends. Because it's like it opens on the right side, right, and then it like closes on the left side. Because like you walk through the side, it's like closes there. Anyways, it'll take a second for your brain to like remember that. Miscellaneous. This is where you can do the fun stuff like music tracks. If you want to switch the songs, Just remember that the stage you're on is always here, where it says current level, on the left here, in this other editor. So make sure you're editing the right stage. It'll tell you at the top here as well. But if you're wondering where that data is coming from, it's over on the left here. So you can change it with any song. Let's say you want it to be the game over song, just to annoy everyone. The banks, be careful with messing with, because if you switch around your banks, you might corrupt stuff, and not even corrupt, but you might corrupt your graphics, and it can be a little bit of a headache. So make sure you do this kind of at the start if you're gonna change it, not really at the end, because you might have to retile everything. It can be a little bit of a nuisance. At level midpoint, this is where you wow, my voice. This is where you can put checkpoints. If you want to put yourself at a certain screen position, certain whatever. For the level boss point, this is where you set the boss point. You can do these with the screen editor by clicking these buttons. These are more for like, I find it's more useful for the graphics set. Typically, setting it to 0 is useful because then whatever palette you set with the enemy editor will take place. And that's one thing that's not really told anywhere, so that was really hard. And sometimes you can do it directly if you know the exact number. I find it can be interesting. And this is also where you set the multipath. So if you want a certain screen to go a certain direction, and like what direction it goes, I found it a little complicated, so I didn't end up using it. But it is pretty straightforward overall. It's just you kind of have to like experiment with it. There's also the CHR animation editor, but I didn't really mess with that, so I'm not really sure what that does, unfortunately. Text editor, you can't actually do anything, but you can see the text I edited. My powerful meme robots. I used the Hex Editor to actually do a lot of this. So any of the text you can see here, you can pretty much edit, like, in, like I said, in a Hex Editor directly. Like in this one, for example, if I type in like staff, like, oh, there's the staff. And then it's funny because not everything will be like in direct order. So like you might have to scroll around a bit. Or if you know the exact word, type it in. Control F-ing it. So Quaker Man, like that's like the boss name. So one thing you have to remember is if you're typing in a thing, you don't want to press backspace because that will delete the byte or the bit. Kind of just want to use the arrow keys. And caps matter in Mega Man. Pretty much everything has to be uppercase. And that's pretty much all you can do with the text editing. But you can edit most of the text in the game actually. It's pretty impressive. There is some stuff that is a bit more complicated, like the stage select or the weapons. And that there is some patches out there now that we've been trying to get out there. Or again, there's ways to ask for help for that. But that you would have to know where it's finding the letters and the numbers and stuff, and you might have to use there's a certain name for it. The list, the tile list, PSA bank list. There's some kind of list bank thing, alphabet. You basically have to import, and you can essentially like look up where everything is, or ask any kind of any of your friends who might have help. There's also special things. So Mega Man 5, this is actually exclusive to this. Where this is where you load the Charge Man Train Interior graphics. So that's like exclusive for Charge Man's level. So remember I told you this left side here is how you do everything. So I changed it to Charge Man. I look at the screen editor. And you might be wondering like what that means. So later in the level, depending on which tiles you use, of course. So like here, for example, see how everything's all cussed up. Because of the way the NES is, it like loads different banks at different points. So if I have that loaded, this will still look good, but it's hard to explain how this all works. But essentially, it's more just for you as an editor, so you know what you're working with. But it matters more for what palettes and tiles and things you set. And some stuff is hard-coded into the game. So like the auto-scroller and things like that. So you may have to work around things, or shorten things, or elongate things, depending on what you see, on what you got. Let's see. Testing, which pretty much is F9. Just remember F5, F9. F5's to save, F9's to run. There's also running shell command, which I never did. Some of this other stuff I never did. Like, I never cleared the unused blocks. I was too afraid. You can dump pretty much anything in the game. But I'm not really sure how to re-import it. I think you could just use like TLP or something like that to do that. Like I said, I was using TLP and I mostly just did manual edits, like by mouse. You know what I mean? Like just doing things like by hand. There's the enemy ID usage where you can get like a good list of where everything is. You can kind of use it as a cross-reference for things sometimes. But, or like just looking up names. If you're like curious for that other thing I showed you, the object parameter. There's also the configuration. I think there was 1 or 2 things I enabled, but I can't remember at this point. So I'll just show my screen. Pretty much want everything on. I was doing large blocks. Yeah. I don't think you really want to turn anything off at this point, because a lot of it's like, it helps you out. If you're more experienced, you might know, you know what I mean? But you want to, yeah. Let's dive into like a level. So like I said, primarily you're going to be wanting, oh, and the last thing I should show, sorry, before a level, is if you click scene screen mode, this will switch it to the banks. And this is where it stores some of the things that you may not know about. Again, Screen Editor is going to let you see like everything. That Screen Editor is like your life. That's like how you see the opening cutscene. If you want to edit these tiles or like change how it looks. And again, you do that left clicking or whatever. Like I just ruined that total screen. That's where like loading the backup might come in handy, right? But again, you don't know how far back it's going to go, so don't be relying on that. That's more for like, I've messed everything up and I need to like redo today's work. But again, different banks have different things. Like here's where the title screen was. Some stuff was edited through Hex. Some stuff was edited through like placing tiles. Like I made my own custom sprite in the TLP. And then by using the SBD editor thing, I was able to import it. Where can't I find it right now? Here we go. Yeah, it was like, I think it was still doing the charge man stuff. It was getting weird. Huh. It wasn't like that before. That's new. Anyways. And you can change like, and this is where you can also change palettes and stuff. Like in that palette editor, you can like mess with stuff here. You can like know which one you're trying to change. Like the Capcom one's changing right now, right? And it does matter. Sometimes things won't let you change effects. Sometimes things won't let you edit certain things. And the other times it'll let you edit like every element of everything. And some things are shared. So do be careful with that as well. Like some of the Wily stages are shared. So let's go quickly into this. So on this left side, most of this you're not going to need unless you have like extensive knowledge of these games. All you really need to know is this current level. The CHR bank stuff, didn't have to use any of this. Like I said, there's also more 4 and 5 or 4 and 6 stuff, which we're not using. Ignore screen layout data I've never used the CHR stuff. Like I said, this is all extracting and importing. This might be more for when you do this stuff, the dumping. I never used this. I never used this either. Again, it all seems like more for the super advanced people, and you're probably not going to need this tutorial anyway. You probably already know what you're doing. So yeah, when you open up like a stage, like I open up Gravity Man, when you're doing these tiles, you may be thinking like, oh yeah, replacing things, and everything pretty much works how you think it is. Like this is a floor. Like this will be a floor or a wall. Like pretty much in Mega Man, everything works as it works, and they are chunky tiles. And you may be wanting to do like more smaller tiles, and that's where the SBD editor can come into play. The only issue is that since Mega Man makes everything up in like bigger sets, you'll be creating like new tiles in the game. So it ends up taking up more space. So when you try to convert this to normal level data, most of the time you'll be okay because of your structure limit and all that kind of stuff. Like see how now it's down here. Now I've created like a new structure in the game. So you can only make so many of those. And that was only 2 blocks, right? So it becomes kind of frustrating. It's good for like unique one-of-a-kind moments, but you don't want to rely on the SBD editor for that. So let's go back to the screen editor. We'll stay focused for now. And so, you know what I mean? We can keep that if we want. You use these arrows at the bottom to scroll, and it'll like take you to different, your level is always going to just scroll that way. in the editor. But on the top right here is how you set the actual scroll. So if you actually look, it says up ×1. And I did that by putting this to a 4 and this to a 0. And it always tells you what you're setting it to, like what number. You just have to click the arrows or type in a number. And it also, if you hover over stuff, it does tell you a lot of directions. So, yeah, don't be afraid, again, to look in the help. There's a few guide things as well. So, yeah, so when you set the length, you can set how many screens. You can set a lot of screens. Like, I can make this go up, like, forever if I wanted. Mega Man does a surprising amount. The only thing is that it will push things around. So, by doing what I just did, I actually did break things a little bit. Now this is going to the right, and that's not supposed to, and, like, stuff like that. That's supposed to be 2. There we go. Oh, yeah, no, I see. I totally messed everything up now. But it's super sensitive. But one thing you do want to remember is when you're setting the boss room, because it's probably going to be one of like the last rooms you'll set. Typically, what you'll see is you'll kind of get like empty data, or you might have additional stuff. And you have to make sure you check the boss door effect. Yeah, see, everything got pushed over 1. I added like a new room in there. So anyways, when you want like the double effect, so you want it here, like at the boss itself, and here, like before the boss. And afterwards, you kind of want to put some kind of screen somewhere. And I find that's useful because it kind of solidifies the boss room. For some reason, sometimes it won't do the final scroll on a thing if it doesn't have a room after it. I'm not sure why. It's not all the time. But if you're finding that you're getting stuck or it's not loading the next room, even though you set everything correctly, try putting an additional one afterwards. Yeah, so I found that worked. Yeah, the boss door effect is for when you want the boss door effect. It's pretty self-explanatory. Again, you only see the initial one. You'll only see like this first one. Again, you right-click the copy. So right now I'm just copying these tiles. You'll see them down here. And again, if I wanted to set this as the boss point, I click set boss point. That's what set it right now. And you always want to set it at the final build. Because if you edit it, it's always going to go back to the previous boss point set that it remembers. So it actually can like go back to an earlier build of your game. So you do want to make sure you always like set it at the end of whatever you edit. What's it called? So you can put down any tiles. I have the grid on, so that's why some stuff looks a little funky. And most things are pretty self-explanatory. So like again, you right-click to do it. We're in the boss room right now. And you may be wondering like, oh man, I want more complicated boss rooms. I actually tried to do that. And for a lot of boss rooms, Mega Man would get stuck and actually soft lock if he was on anything but the ground floor. So if you're able to find out a way, let me know. But in a lot of the rooms, there was 1 or 2 rooms I could get around it or do fun little things with it. But most rooms, if you had things in the center, Mega Man wouldn't be able to get to the center, and that's it. But yeah, as you're going through, to add the effects, like the gravity switching, I have to go into the enemy editor. And everything in the game is pretty much an enemy. So like right here, like these effects right here. This is like the gravity switching. So down here at the bottom here is like everything, the general tab here with the enemies. Every enemy is like a thing. Sorry, so when you click the enemy, like it takes you to the different numbers. But when you click the thing here, I'm changing this right here. So it'll tell you what I'm changing. It'll be like, oh yeah, you're changing the wheel. And whenever you last hovered over will be the thing you're changing, by the way. So if you are doing this and you mouse down, you might actually hover over something and double up. To make sure like you kind of go like the long way. You know what I mean? See, and you can change it to like anything. That's how you get like the auto strollers, the drills, weapon refills, mini bosses, item refills, health refills, like cutscenes, like literally at palette switches, exclusive things that, yeah, like there's now we're in the thing. You pretty much just keep clicking up, and you'll find lots of stuff. You'll find a lot of blank Mega Mans, but you have to keep going. You'll find all the letters. So if you end up deleting those by accident, that's where the letters are. You might find random stuff like bosses running. A lot of these are like because they do random shit, so it's like it helps them like figure stuff out. Or like it's like where the game stores the data. So we're like going into like the RAM or whatever the hell right now. And if you put cutscenes, like it will end the game and stuff. So Unless you, again, know how to do a lot of fancy editing. Yeah. And again, now if you notice I'm going up, we're in the palettes now. So like background palette update. And sometimes you want to disable a palette. This is where you might have to disable the CHR. Most of them will tell you what it's for, like Star, Napalm Man. Because some of them are stage exclusive, or they'll do like the palettes or banks for that stage. Normally, like these DE ones I never used. And some of these are blank data as well you can mess with. And some of them you can see it down here with the palettes. I never really messed with this that much. I don't think I messed with it at all, actually. I think that's it. Yeah, once you get to FF, that's it. And you can type in numbers. Yeah, there's the ball head guy. Lion, whatever. You know, you can have literally anything. With Mega Man 5, if you put different enemies together, like if I put this and that and that, if there's either too many sprites or things that conflict, it's gonna start flashing. So you kind of have to, most things that are in levels together aren't gonna flash because they're designed to be together. But if you are gonna experiment with enemies, make sure to just double check that they don't, that they're not gonna like conflict or flash. Because it just gets like annoying, because like, it just looks like, it doesn't look good, you know what I mean, like visually. And it can be hard to see, sometimes they turn invisible and stuff. Or like their attacks don't load properly because there's too many sprites. So do be mindful of that. You can actually have a surprising amount of sprites. On this one screen, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Plus these spikes, which aren't sprites, they're part of the level. You can kind of get around things. Oh yeah, by the way, these spikes never actually loaded in the game. There were supposed to be spikes here. Which I always thought was kind of funny, that they never actually did. But yeah, like I said, so even though you edit left and right, it does it on both here, so you don't have to worry about that. You can kind of see like where the enemies are placed, like where to put things. Most of this is self-explanatory. You can kind of look at Mega Man 5 and just see the numbers. And you can use the right click. So let's say I want to move this effect to another screen. I can use right click to move it to the exact spot it's at. That's something that's not really detailed too much. That is something that's very, very useful. That right click does that. Left click does anywhere. But right click will also put it to the closest like spot. So if you're having issues like placing something, like you can also use right click after you've clicked it. But like you see how it like zipped onto that spot a bit better. I'm like left clicking, then I right click, and like you go bloop. That's something as well that's useful to know. That might kind of help. And I think that's pretty much it. Like enemies, you pretty much just place. You can insert enemies with this button here as well, or the insert button. And again, same thing. I'd go down here, I'd change what it is. That guy, throw it down. That's pretty much it. Oh yeah, just make sure they work. So you'd press like F5 to save, F9 to load. And then yeah, you go through, and that's pretty much it with that. It does kind of show you what's gonna be compatible on the left here. See how like it changes out here? And it's now changed out with this guy, because that's what the guy I put in. There's only so many spots it can have. So that's why it does matter what enemies you place. I think the sprite group does help with that as well. You can animate the sprites to make... It's like a little bonus thing if you want them to, like, see what they were going to do when they actually do their thing. Which can be a little useful when you're, if you want to test it without having to, like, test it, you know what I mean? But, I'm trying to think. That's pretty much it for that. With this, making sure the scrolling works. Like I said, pretty much want to make sure you always are adding onto it, not really going back. And if you do go back, you pretty much have to reset them all. It's not that big of a deal. You can do scroll back enable, and that allows you to go backwards. Like if you want them to go, like if you transition, it's like a one screen thing. And you want them to be able to go back, you can put scroll back enable, and then they'd be able to do that thing where they go back and forth. But if you want them to just like have a really long screen, that's where you'd set it really long. So if I have an upright, so you go up and then to the right. Once you go up, I'd be able to go right 5 screens. I'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then from there, then it would transition. You know what I mean? Now it's like a new one. Then I'd go right 1 screen, now it's a new one. I go right 1 screen, now it's a new one. So, but if I want it to be like a smooth one, I'd put it on that. Instead of it being like a fresh screen, like I'd do that hard transition, this would be like smooth. So do remember that. If you want a smooth or hard transition, things to remember. Always keep that in mind. You can change the background palettes for the individual sections, which is useful. So you pretty much want to keep it consistent. But there will be parts where you might have to change it, like for boss fights or for boss palettes. And that is something you do have to make sure you change in this miscellaneous part. I mentioned that earlier. So you might have to go into the enemy editor and find where the palette is. And like you might have to pre-place it somewhere, or oh, that's not the palette. I didn't have to do it on this level. I think I was able to get it here with the ID set. But some of these levels I had to, like here, like you can see I put an effect up here. That's to make it like a certain way. So it looks like visually a certain way. Same thing here, so it looks a certain way. For the boss. And then also for this, like same thing. I set it to a 3, because 3 was the right color for everything. So, yeah. Again, you can mess with more stuff than I did. This is pretty much it. And it's also, I didn't really do much level editing. It was more just showing you, like, this is what the enemies do. You can put pretty much anything together. Insert what you want, delete what you want, put things where you want. Most things you do with the screen editor. So you want to right click, and then you left click again to paste, right? So I just got rid of that platform. Now you'd have to, like, rush jet across. Like, no, screw that. I want to put a platform here. And things might be... And the structure thing is always going to show you the preview of what you have currently for your left click. So I right click to take it. And again, there's other... You can take it from different parts of the level. Like, I could go over here, take this green thing. Go over here, paste that there. Like, there's no limit to that. And I believe you could also go from one of these tables. Like, I think you can go from here. There's a way to do it, I think. Copy? Can't remember. Even without that, you can just... Again, this is like a basic tutorial. I'm not going into like super fancy stuff. Or you could add it in with the SBD editor. Sometimes you have to reload stuff because it gets a little weird. The SBD editor is being weird today. Never seen it like this. Being weird. What you doing? Hold a deer. Or it might even be because I made the structures and stuff. Things were getting weird. That's why I don't recommend making structures, because things get like weird sometimes. Like the whole game breaks or whatever. The screen editor won't break, by the way. This won't break the game using the screen editor. Like doing this stuff. Whenever you press F5, everything will be okay. But when you're doing the SBD, that's when things can get a little bit more scary. Because you're creating new tiles and new things. And it will warn you. You have to always click convert to normal level data. This thing in the corner. That's only for SBD edits though. But again, if you're not doing that, you don't have to worry. And make sure you change this to copy if you're used to the other screen, so you don't mess yourself up as well. But this is where you can create new objects. Like you could be like, whoops. You could be like, I'm gonna do this. You know what I mean? Like put all this together. Create a thing. And then I can place the object. You have to use this bottom part here. If I go to place object, right? It would place this object in the world. And then I would convert to normal level data. And it will give you a warning. It might pop up saying, this is going to corrupt the game. Like, it'll literally say that. In that case, you might have to remove stuff or remove tiles or, like, change stuff around. Again, it all comes down to your structure limit. The structure table. And as you see, I did a few custom ones in the game already and all this stuff. It's not that it just happens. I think I filled up a bunch of this. But the most useful part of the most useful one I found was definitely for like the level editor, or like or even stuff like that if you wanted to edit. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Why can't I find it? Trying to find the like level. Yeah, it's right here. Just doing that. Everything's getting all glitchy today. Sometimes you have to save it with F5 and reload it. Always make sure there's no autosave, so if you make sure you save with F5 or just go up here to file save. But again, some things get corrupted or not. That's why backups are important. It's still, you know, it's still doing its best. Did I break everything? What's going on? Never seen it like this before. Well, usually it doesn't look corrupted, but anyways, you can like edit stuff around and do things. I'm like, is the game broken? The game looks good. Weird. Well, I'm not sure why that's going down. But usually, yeah, you can edit the tiles here. So if you make a custom graphic, I can still show you on the title screen at least. If you make like a custom graphic, you can, you know what I mean, like paste it into the game and do it that way. So there was a few things like if you're not going to use the Mega Man title screen, or if you want to edit that, because you can just go into the TLP, edit that, and then it's already done. You don't have to worry about doing any of this. Or if you edit the scarf, like I didn't edit the scarf at all. But if I wanted to edit the scarf, I could, you know what I mean? Like I could edit these tiles in a different editor, and then I could place them around different places. Like if I wanted like enemies or whatever, different graphics, and then you would just convert it to normal level data. Typically the title screen has like nothing. So and you're probably not going to do too much anyway. But there's definitely lots of different ways you can mess with it and make it work. And oh, the final thing I forgot to mention. Let's say, like, for example, my ROM's getting messed up right now. And that was on purpose. I was kind of messing around a lot today. Let's say you wanted to save everything. You can save your object data for your screens or your level. Or you can do it for your screen data. And this is super useful. This is the one I mostly use, the screen data. So let's say, like, you wanted to import the boss room. You'd, like, scroll over to the boss room. Screen data, save. Current screen, you know what I mean, save it as whatever. Save it as a certain file. And then you can open it somewhere else. And here, I'll show. Might as well just show. Let's say, like, oh, like I wanted to move everything backwards. And let's say I already saved everything else. Look, now I pushed it back. Now we actually have two boss rooms, if you look. Like, that's at E and at F. Because that's actually useful, because it actually pulls the boss rematches from the original boss point for whatever reason. So you actually could make two different boss rooms, or if you make it go reach the original boss room, it's just going to be the same. So you know what I mean. So you could actually copy this room, paste it somewhere else, and that was actually what I did a few times to keep it consistent with things. And I made a few changes too, like this one, if you notice, is upside down. So you'll know where the original rooms are because of, like, you know what I mean, the game will do that. It'll already be there in the game. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. The palette editor, you can put effects by clicking these little buttons here. The only issue is that not everything will stay consistent. Like, I could change everything right now, but when you load from a checkpoint and all that stuff, it's not going to remember what you did. So you can do some of it with the miscellaneous thing here, where you can set it. You can also do some of it with the enemy palette set stuff, where you set it with the insert enemy and make the palette number that you need. Let's say I wanted like 92, because you can preset those things in the palette editor, you know what I mean, make it whatever. I didn't put the right thing there, but you know what I mean, like that general idea. And I think that's pretty much it. There's definitely way more to this program and way more you could do. But that should at least get some people started with Mega Man hacking. Get different levels going, you know what I mean? You can edit the stage, select screen so you don't have text there, or different things like that, or different types of text. If you go, you can't do it in the Hex Editor, but you can, there's definitely ways to edit things, like I was telling you, like editing sprites and importing them and doing stuff like that. So yeah, and that's pretty much going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to like it, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And let me know what you thought. If you have any questions, or if there's anything I misexplained, let me know. Or if there's anything you noticed, or things you want to get better at, we can make this like a little forum. Post your questions or answers. We can try to, you know, just make Mega Man hacking a little bit more fun, a little bit more easier. And again, this is for Mega Man 3 through 6, most of this stuff. There is going to be some differences for all the games, so do keep that in mind in different programs. And like I said, there might be advancements. So there might be new programs and tools, or things that maybe I didn't use or know about. But feel free to use those if you find them. And yeah, thank you so much. I will see y'all soon, and goodbye.